Mudvayne LD 50. Lethal dosage 50. We'll get to the meaning of that at the end. This is going to be track by track, chronological order from start to finish. On some tracks I've got a lot more to say than others, but this is the only Mudvayne album I can foresee reviewing ever because it's the best and has a lot to say about it. And the reason I'm doing this now is because Mudvayne's just been popping off everywhere on social media because they are going to do a reunion of sorts with festival dates in later 2021. At least that's their plan. So they've been popping off everywhere. And on some of the metal sites that I follow, they were talking about like, oh, check out these live performances of Dig and stuff. And it just brought me back to a magical place. Back when I was in high school. And LD50 came out. And they had a certain aesthetic to them in that era. Every album, for a while anyway, seemed to have a different aesthetic. And LD50 was buck wild. I remember, you know, I won't describe all of them. I'm just going to talk about Cud, or Chad Gray. I'll probably refer to him as Cud the rest of the way through because that was the name he chose for the album, and I enjoy it. Most of the makeup and stuff varied every once in a while, but he had like face painted silver, whole head painted silver, I should say. Had like a blue, very like shock blue mohawk. He had like black lips and stuff coming from his lips, like wavy gravy lines. Someone compared them to like a really evil, I forgot the name of the director. It's right on the tip of my brain, and I forget his name. Tim? Is it Tim something? Oh, man. I can't remember. Anyway, Tim Burton. Yeah. Because there was like some pinstripe stuff. There was these wavy gravy lines, whatever. Anyway, he was wearing overalls and a white like tank top underneath, and usually there's blood all over them. He had like a fake bullet hole with blood in the middle of his forehead, and he had some, I think, black rings around his eyes most of the time. But it was just a buck wild look. Look it up. Cud from LD50 era, Mudvayne. I remember having posters in my locker, Slipknot posters, Mudvayne posters, other stuff that was just like scary. And I remember that a vice principal came by one day and was like, maybe you... for me, high school was grade 7 to 12 also, by the way. So when I was in my later years, there's like grade 7s walking around and like walking past my locker. And I remember he said like, some of the smaller kids are kind of scared. And he was like very lightly and politely saying like maybe I should take some pictures down, and I was like, no, that's okay. Like, I don't remember how I said it, but he dropped it right away and I didn't do it. But yeah, let's get into it because it's going to be a long one, and it's just, I am really excited to do this. I was really happy to go through and listen to the album again, and it's just grown and matured so much more than, you know, when the majority of times I've listened to it, it was in my teens, in high school, and I didn't listen to it a lot after that. So I haven't had like this evolution with it. It's kind of like it was here in this one place and I got a certain thing out of it, and then later on I was like, oh, those are some songs I like, and then now it's like blowing my mind. Okay. So one of the things we have to talk about is that they were heavily influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey. So originally a novel by Arthur C. Clarke, and then that was taken and adapted for film, directed by Stanley Kubrick. So I wish that I could speak on this more because I have not seen the film or read the book. I have 3 parts of that series of 4 books, that being the first one, and I haven't read any of them either. I do own the movie. I just haven't seen it yet. So there's a piece of the puzzle there missing for me that when I do watch it, I'll be like excited and more informed when I listen to the album next time, that like, oh, this is what's going on, or when I read it, or whatever comes first. Probably watching it, because reading that will be a journey that I'm not ready for right now. But anyway, so one thing that happens here is the very intro track called Monolith. So this was really there's a bunch of interludes in here we're going to talk about, but especially this one, and I've brought this up before, especially with Slipknot, that these textured, mostly instrumental intros, that they can either go one of two ways. Like, I find either they're really fitting and they're great, or they're just place fillers that don't need to be there and they're a waste of time and they suck, and we should just start with the first song. And this is an example of a really great instrumental prelude intro track. It really sets the stage for the album conceptually and also somewhat sonically. Again, it's kind of taken some direction from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's got some, I don't know what, spacey vibes. Like, I don't know what to... It's one of the phrases I came up with is that it's a textured landscape that the brutal and the beautiful can dance on. So we're going to get to the brutal and the beautiful later, but right now this textured landscape has some like kind of spacey vibes and like digital vibes and kind of like I don't know, like sound wavy, flowy, like echoey stuff and retracting of sound. It's like yeah, like there's like some chimes going on and it's just like mystical and that's happening. And also we have Words by Terence McKenna, who was a huge proponent of using mushrooms and hallucinogenics LSD as well, like, and just like using them as a way to get to know yourself better is the shorthand that I'll say. But I'm going to read some of what he says here, because it's important. Actually, I'll read everything he says here, but I'm not going to do it for all the interludes. These symptoms suggested that our evolution, I suppose, from the animal kingdom into human kingdom itself was catalyzed or triggered by our encounter with these hallucinogenics. And, yes, we are an ape with a symbiotic relationship to a mushroom, and that has given us self-reflection, language, religion, and all the spectrum of effects that flow from these things. And one can only wonder how these hallucinogenics might affect our future evolution as well. They have brought us to this point, and as we make our relationship to them conscious, we may be able to take control of our future evolutionary path. So this is making a case for healthy relationships with certain drugs. Again, I'm really excited to wrap this thing up and talk about some things that Cud said as to why they named the album this and what the album was conceptually for them, because this directly applies. But they're setting the stage with this nice instrumental textured landscape with these vibes going on, and then Terence McKenna saying the stuff in the background conceptually, being like, what am I stepping into here? Is this just weird for weird's sake? Because when I listened to it as a young teenager, I thought it was just weird for weird's sake, and I didn't get it. One of the other things is that Cud talks about these two elements together, the 2001: Space Odyssey and being on mushrooms. He brought up one time that he had a very life-changing, magical experience while high on mushrooms watching this movie. He made everyone in the band watch it on their own, and then they watched it together as a band, and while they were recording this album, it was on in the studio constantly. So, that was an influence as well. I have not seen the movie, I cannot speak on that, but as I've mentioned in other reviews and conversations and things, I really like when art references art. It just makes things a lot deeper. When I do read the book, when I do watch the movie, again, I've got reference points that I can bring back to this album and get more out of it, which is the gift that keeps on giving. So, from that, again, they're making a case for relationships with drugs. They're talking about evolution. They're saying, like, as we make our relationship with mushrooms or hallucinogenics conscious, and we use them in a certain way, that we might be able to continue evolving in this different way. But there's a lot of theories out there that go into this that I'm not going to get into. So, Dig. We're just going to get right into Dig, which is like the single off the album. It's the song that everybody knows, especially with the meme of what's his name, the bassist that I can't remember his name, and I feel really bad now, that started popping off a couple years ago. So again, we start off with that bass twang. I don't really want to do the onomatopoeia for it. It soon gives away to just full brutality. Cud is just screaming his face off pretty quickly. I don't think this song has any clean singing. It might be the only one on the album that doesn't, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's got some spoken word parts, which definitely come up on the album a bunch, and like the mix of aggression in those vocals and full-on harsh screaming vocals. This is the one song that it's just like the most straightforward, punch in the face, rock out, hard, brutal song. Aggressive. I mean, there's parts where he's like panting for air because he is delivering his vocals so passionately, if I want to say that. Basically, he described it as a letter to the music industry, saying, you know, we're here, we're in this industry now, and basically it's a big fuck you. You're not going to control us. You're not going to take advantage of us. We're going to do what we want to do, and that's it. And we're not sacrificing our artistic vision and stuff, which is interesting because I already said that this is probably the only Mudvayne review I'll do because every album after that kind of got like really radio friendly and commercial. So this is definitely my favorite. But anyway, I'm not saying that they did that because of influence from the outside, but this is just a very honest record. So we get... I need to talk about him lyrically as a whole because he has some really brutal lyrics that are just like very straightforward, lowbrow, direct. And some of them are here. So let me help you tie the rope around your neck. Let me help to talk you the wrong way off the ledge. Let me help you hold the Glock against your head. Let me help you tie the rope around your neck, and in some other variations. So again, this is his thing of being like, you're not going to take advantage of this. I'm not going to change. I'm going to be who I am, stay true to myself, and fuck you for trying to take advantage of me, or fuck you for trying to make me change. So it's not only about the music industry. It doesn't mention that in the song. So it is this broader message that is very relatable and aggressive, and how you shouldn't be bullied. Basically, it's an anti-bullying song, everybody. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist there. And again, those lyrics are very straightforward, to the point, aggressive, describing what is happening or what he wants to happen. It's very visual. A lot of his lyrics are, and I think looking at this song, you wouldn't say he's very poetic, but we're going to get into that because he is. So the next track is Internal Primates Forever. It starts off with a really good driving riff, but it soon morphs into this like fusion jazz, like prog song that this element plays throughout the album in different songs, but like this, it just gets really strong here. The instrumentation gets pretty sparse sometimes, especially in verses, which is kind of one of their signatures. It leaves a lot of open room for Cud vocally as well. I find they do that incredibly well. Is that it doesn't seem like stripped back and what's the word? It doesn't seem like it's done poorly. They do it well. It's purposeful. Everything's still there, and it's not an accident. Yeah. So he creates an interesting juxtaposition because his vocals on this song don't necessarily alter a lot with the instrumentation. I think that if it was just this regular driving new metal-ish song instrumentally, his vocals would fit perfectly over that too. So it's a nice juxtaposition for that. He does some like really light scatting bits in this, which kind of, I guess that's the one thing vocally he does on this that kind of mirrors the weird funky prog stuff going on from time to time. I know there were some people arguing in a subreddit about this being like, this whole album being this prog metal masterpiece, and really upsetting people with that, and especially this song. So lyrically, we're back to some themes off of Monolith. Perhaps we're speaking about some substance abuse on a base level, but also I think that we're talking about the impossibility of moving beyond some things, feeling stuck, despite we're referencing evolution. Internal Primates Forever is something that gets repeated in the song a lot. It's, him discussing at some times that maybe we're unchanging and just stupid, more instinctual than we are intellectual as we'd like to think, as individuals and as a society as a whole. And so that again, that's right there at the forefront. It's not my favorite track because it gets into the weird, funky jazz prog stuff a little bit. I can still listen to it without like cringing or anything, but yeah, not one of my favorites because of that. Because when they get into that territory really heavy, I'm like, okay, like this isn't for me. People called it math metal for a little bit, and they were like, we never said that, even though I think it was the drummer like made a joke about bringing up the abacus whenever they need to write songs, and someone took that and ran with it. But anyway, so I don't know if this song is called -1 or -1, but that's an interesting thing too. I find that one of the things that they do really well is with their titles, they can mean a lot there. Sometimes it's just really straightforward, but sometimes those titles can make you think, and we're going to get into that a bit. But this really showcases immediately Cud just crooning, just really expressing his vocal abilities a lot in this song, and we get some incredibly amazing clean singing here. He's got a breadth and depth of vocal ability, and his singing can be incredibly soothing, which is, almost foreshadowing of a song called Cradle later on. But again, we've got that kind of light funk verse instrumentally, and then the chorus that complements Cud's aggression, which is great. His lyrical prowess, there's a breadth and depth of that as well, because he can get incredibly poetic, like I've mentioned, and then also just brutally straightforward. And this kind of introduces that a little more, and we're going to see it on the album a bunch. He juxtaposes his poetic lyrical nature with the brutal and simplistic lowbrow intensity. He plays these together incredibly well, and sometimes has an angst as well that is very accessible to a certain age range or maturity level or whatever. So this caught me at a certain time where a lot of this other stuff, these poetics, these larger concepts went really over my head, and I was just kind of latching on to this more angsty lyrical delivery and diction than I do now. Because now it's like the thing that I'm like, yes, I understand what we're doing here, but it's not the part that's most interesting to me. Whereas before, like he just combines it all so well. So again, that multiple people, it's just layered for accessibility, not in a radio friendly way, accessibility in a way that it's just written that people can get certain themes out of it that other people can't because of just where they're at at that listen, where they're at maturity or emotionally or whatever. Yeah. I've got some lyrics. So we start off at the very beginning. We want to talk about the concept of the song. Losses, losers, and more is the first thing right out of the gate. And again, it's -1 or -1, and so it makes perfect sense that's where we're going to go with this. Anyway, losses, losers, and more. Gain of life's pleasures, cohorts listen behind the doors. To a life sheltered in, less than zero in me, all my walls falling down, pains aloft, misery. I'm sure that the lessons were learned. I'm sure that the punishments went well deserved. By the pawn in the plan, taste of shit, bitterness, walk from me everything systematically. So again, I feel like that's a very poetic verse, and then it's just like taste of shit, bitterness, and it's like, yeah, I'm sure you could have used the taste of something else that is equal, well, maybe not equally bitter, but that's the thing, because it's not about sugarcoating stuff, right? Like he has this great juxtaposition of his lyrics and when to get poetic and when not to, and what that means, and how that strikes somebody who's listening to this. Because also his vocal delivery there changes when he says those words too, and then comes back into this very soft kind of croon. And then those angsty lyrics come into play too, especially towards the end. Don't feel sorry for me. Don't need your sympathy or empathy. And he repeats that a lot. And that was one of those things I'm like, that's what I latched onto when I was listening the first time. But yeah, again, I think that this is just some really great self-reflection. A lot of this album, I believe, is self-reflection, but then there's this larger concept for a lot of things too. This one seems a lot more close to the chest and personal. We're not talking about society as a whole and evolving and being crap and whatever. I don't know why I said crap, but whatever. This next song, Death Blooms, one of my favorites on the album, and definitely is one of the most artistic, I would say. I've definitely referenced it before. There's a painting, maybe two, at least one, that I've used some of the lyrics and title for. But yeah, musically, again, we've got that prog funk going on a little bit, but it's not overwhelming. We've got this thick nu metal groove that comes in really strong in this song. Some great pummeling drums as well. Clean passages. Everything, again, complementing each other just perfectly on this song. Cud talked about once that this was in reference to his grandmother dying and how that really put things into perspective for him, because he was incredibly close with her versus his parents, and that she was just this beautiful person that he cared a lot about. So it spends some time setting up the ugliness of mortality, and then times he just soars into the chorus. I just want to run, fly kites, wrestle, jump, and play, swim through waves that crash to shore, memories in me, cocooned in misery. And just his vocal delivery on that, again, just soaring, clean vocals, beautiful singing, and it makes you long for what he is longing for, which is like the innocence of childhood and play. And, this is after he set up, mortality. We're all going to rot and die, and everything's horrible, and it's no good. And then just saying that I just want to go back to this time where I wasn't aware, I wasn't thinking about mortality. So again, something that I feel is incredibly relatable. And yeah, to me, this is one of the songs that really encapsulates the album and what Mudvayne really was then at its best. It's got everything, really. The frantic pleading in the pre-chorus as well. Pull me out of body, don't want in, feeble, frail, and rotting. That is there. Again, there's so many elements that they can combine into a song, and it just works. And that's the other thing. A lot of these songs are not your standard, 3.5 minute songs with like 4/4s, and there's crazy different time signatures on some of them. We've got songs that are 7+ minutes, a lot of them over 5 minutes, but they can find a way to make this all incredibly cohesive. Yeah, there's a poem, well, I'll just call it a poem, at the end that is just beautiful, and those were some of the lyrics that I referenced in the painting. But dark for fear of failure, an inner gloom as wide as an eye, and fermenting, roiling hate. Death grip in my veins, unveiling rancid petals, flowering forth foul nectar. I love that line. The space between a blink and a tear, death blooms. And I think that in that spoken word part of the end of the song, he has somehow infused beauty. I mentioned before that these sonic textures are laying the groundwork for beauty and brutality to just dance and play on this album, whether it be the beauty of his voice or lyrical content or whatever, because this isn't a very positive and uplifting album, but there's still this hint of beauty there at times, and this is one of those times. And one of the most beautiful things that I find on this album happens right here as well. This song just bleeds into a interlude instrumental thing. It's very short, and it's called The Golden Ratio. And it just goes in there, the short instrumental, and it's so perfect, not just sonically, but the title. Because, and then from The Golden Ratio, it just goes right into Cradle. So those three things together all are very thematically bound as well. To go from Death Blooms to Cradle, even with the titles right there, you can understand some of what I'm going to be referencing. But The Golden Ratio, we've got this mathematical device, this thing that they're playing with. Even if you look at the album artwork, which we haven't talked about yet, but I may as well insert it in here, we see life, we see a child, a brand new baby. We see molecular structure or DNA or whatever's there. We've got the periodic table of elements listed, or not listed, but referenced there. We've got these things that are like life and beauty, science, math, and then we talked about evolution, which is, usually when we're talking about that, we're talking about science. We're not talking about other views on how we became to be who we are. But the golden ratio, that's the thing, is like, they're talking about things in a very, they're referencing a lot of things mathematically, scientifically, chemicals, things that we can look at under a microscope and whatever, not ethereal things. But they're creating art, which is an ethereal thing. They're creating this beauty and this art and these concepts that you can't reach out and touch. You feel music, right? Like, they also combine some of these elements to create the music, like these very structured mathematical things to create music, which we'll get into, but we feel it. I don't like see formulas in my head when I hear the songs, right? Anyway, so if you don't know anything about the golden ratio, basically, they also, it's the divine proportion, and it finds itself in mathematics and art. We find it aesthetically pleasing. It is said, we as in humans just find it aesthetically pleasing because the way that it just works out that way. The pyramids, the Giza pyramids were constructed using the golden ratio. The Mona Lisa was even used the golden ratio as well. And this is just a beautiful metaphor that bridges both of these songs, just with the title alone. Because if we didn't have that title, I don't think we would know, that this is the golden ratio, of course. Yeah. So death and life being beautiful things, and yet at the same time, in both these songs, Cud, is talking about death being this horrible thing that we can't escape and is the worst thing in the world, which I'm right there with you. But we've got hints of beauty here as well. So Cradle. The only thing I'll really say about it is it's attempting to find strength to go on. It's like, but again, we started with the end of life, and then we start with and then we go into transitioning to the beginning of life through Cradle in a way. And we talk about the strong abandonment issues that Cud has, that he expresses here. He gets incredibly personal on this one again. It begs the question from him to ask, what is the point? Is basically how I interpret this lyrically. And again, I feel like it's got a good mix, just like Death Blooms did. A little less artistically creative, maybe. Not a bad thing at all. It's still a good song instrumentally as well. And then after that, we're going to get into Nothing to Gain. And this was completely lost on me as a kid. I thought it was just being weird for weird's sake again. Gain is spelled G-E-I-N. And now I have forgotten his name. Oh, man. What's his name? Oh, no. Ed Gain? Is that it? I think so. And I can't see it in my notes right now. But, so musically it's cool, except that this is the first time I feel like the funk was too much. It's in the verses, it just goes way too far for me. And it crosses into like 70s porn music. It's just like I hate doing onomatopoeia, but it's like really like that slap bass 70s funk porn background music, and it just doesn't work for me here at all. I don't think it works. I think this is like a huge misstep on the album to have that in there, because every other part of the song works incredibly well and it's great. Now, I mentioned the thing about the golden ratio, so we're going to get into that a little bit. So it's said that during the songwriting process, the band members paired riffs with, this is Wikipedia, by the way, with lyrics based on what they referred to as number symbolism. And that, there was a riff which alternated in bars of 4 and 5 because the number 9 is a lunar number. They felt that the riff would fit the song's lyrics, which referred to a serial killer, and Ed Gein, that was it. Grave robber, serial killer Ed Gein, whose actions they associate with nighttime activity. So when you get into that math metal and that real structured stuff, like they talked about lyrical themes, and they're like, oh, this riff, like 4 and 5, that makes 9, and what, like lunar number, and that stuff goes way above my head. But that's what some of their process was for this. And one of the things was, what did they want to do with this? Everything else, they're not grabbing off of like other people. You know, it's either society as a whole, social commentary, or really personal, and both. And then we've got this thing with Ed Gein, and I felt like it was really interesting. I don't think it sticks out like a sore thumb. I think it makes a lot of sense. What does Cud say here? It seemed impossible for Gein to bridge the gap into mainstream society, and I found that exciting that I could find humanity in him. So I had seen this where he discussed it elsewhere, and he talked about this being a really good challenge of like, this is a human being, and like, he had feelings too, and he's obviously demonized for the things that he did. But is there a way to find humanity in him? Is there a way to tell a story about him where we can empathize with certain parts of him because he is also human? So I found that interesting. It's definitely not breaking new ground necessarily, but it's still a challenge worthwhile pursuing. And it's a good song, other than the funk that gets in there way too much. And this is where we get into another interlude, and this is where things start to suck with the interludes. Mutandis. It's got some more distorted science talk in the background. They talk about I don't remember. I don't think I could find lyrics for it either, and I don't have the insert on me. I should have grabbed it, but I didn't, and that might not even have it in there. I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah, we've got some of that going on in the background again, and the title, apparently it's used when comparing two or more cases or situations, making necessary alterations while not affecting the main point of the issue, is the definition that I got. So I'm happy to say that I believe that it means something worthwhile, because everything on the album seems to, but it went over my head and I don't get it, and I didn't take time to just like research this term a whole bunch, because then I would have to tie it to the stuff in the background that I can't really hear. And there's stuff there, I just don't know what it is. So why I say this starts to suck is because the interludes are just breaking up the album now. The golden ratio thing made perfect sense, and it like went into, and I didn't have any like speaking in the background that I remember, and it just, well, from one song to another, conceptually, just the title alone really advanced those two songs and the concepts there. But then, you know, this isn't doing that. I don't feel. Maybe it is and I'm missing it, but it also doesn't smoothly transition in or out of these songs. And conceptually, I don't know. Then we get into Everything and Nothing, one of my favorite songs off the album. It's kind of just a straight banger, not as much as Dig, but it's a rocker. It's got some ambience to it, so it's got some other parts there. It's not as straightforward as Dig, but it's close. And again, I think we're questioning the intent and meaning in life. It's definitely not as strongly poetic as some of the other lyrics. It's a little more straightforward, but not in like this aggressive visual way all the time. But that's definitely there as well. But Everything and Nothing, that's one of those titles where I'm talking about, like, yeah, that just repeats in the song a bunch, and it makes perfect sense, and it's not adding this extra layer necessarily, but it doesn't have to. You know, there's that push and pull in the album, again, with instrumentation, with lyrics, with the concepts, with the delivery, and this is a part of that, and it makes perfect sense, and it's great. After that, we get into Severed. The verses are slowed down to this light funk again. The rest kind of combines with that new metal chunk that definitely is a strong influence here, but it stays pretty soft without being a ballad or something. The thing is a little lower tempo and just like stays softer, but it doesn't sound like, oh, this is the soft song. Like, that's not what it feels like, but you can tell there's a difference. The aggressive parts in here are more led by the vocal delivery than they are by the instrumentation. That's still scaled back a bit. And there's a cool part, I'm going to call it a huge monologue, but where, you know, the guitars do some distressed, I don't know what to call it, just distressed, layered guitar work that's definitely in the back, but really, again, lets Cud do what he needs to do, but it's still there and present enough that it's very much adding, and it's not just forced in the back just to be there for no reason. I would say it's one of the most lyrically ambitious songs on the album. That's the thing. Going back to the instrumentation, it's light and beautiful, but in like a depressive way. That might make more sense. again, we're discussing in self-reflection of how to change and grow. And I'm just going to get into some of the lyrics here. I'm trapped again in endless rain. I divorce the thoughts of you I love with me. I divorce your innocence and my guilt. I divorce the lying, sellout confidence. I'm divorcing every motherfucking thing. So, again, we have like nice, and then it's like that. I divorce the love. I divorce the love bled meaningless. I divorce the makeshift harmony. I divorce the taunting acts of violence. I divorce the pastime of jealousy. I divorce control. I divorce the faith. I divorce the virtue. I divorce the rain. I divorce the excuse. I divorce the greed. I divorce the need. I divorce inequity in this motherfucking bullshit life. Just want it to all go away. So, again, this mix of push and pull of poetics and just like straightforward, harsh, whatever. Like, you know, like, with the profanity and just the blatant, like, I just want it to all go away. Just like, it's just, he just does it so well. Like, that's the thing, if it was all straightforward, more lowbrow, direct, whatever you want to call it, it just wouldn't, it'd be like caveman style. It wouldn't be what I would want. But that push and pull that he gives is just beautiful. Again, we have another interlude. Recombinant resurgence. There's some of the stuff I picked out from the background science talk was about serotonin and neurotransmitters and consciousness. And again, at this point, there's too many interludes. Like, we had the intro, we had the golden ratio, that worked, and then we had that other one that I forgot the name of already, and mutatis mutandis, and then we've got this one, so that's like, the intro doesn't count as interludes, whatever, there's like 3, but this is like the 4th instrumental thing going on here. I don't know what its purpose is. I couldn't find out what this title meant. And I think at this point, you cut these last 2 interludes and bookend, like put some of it longer into the outro or the intro, or cut them all together. I don't know. Then we get into prod. I would say it's less musically ambitious and a little more straightforward than Internal Primates Forever, but it's got some like nice jungle drumming, slow building, while Cut just like vocally soars. Then stutters into this chorus. It's kind of a restrained aggression, but it's still there. Similarly, discussing the horror of man in a way. I feel like this one is more social commentary again. He discusses the beauty that was once there, but it's now deteriorating. How if we weren't here anymore, there's a quote by Jonas Salk who said like something to the effect of, if man wasn't here for like 50 years, then the world would thrive or something. Anyway. But the opposite. If insects were gone for like 50 years, the planet would just die, and if man was gone for 50 years, the planet would thrive. Anyway, some lyrics from Cud. Drain us of life and cleanse the mess. Which I think backs up that quote there. And we got that proggy bit back in here as well. So another great vocal performance as well. It's a really solid song. Another favorite of mine off the album. It's a little less poetic, a little more digestible, while also still being a thinker, which is great. I like that. Getting closer to the end here, Pharmacopia. I'd call it the hard funk fest. It's maybe my second least favorite song on the album. I think we're discussing substance abuse and the reliance and dependency on drugs in a lighthearted and fun way. These are just a few of my favorite things. As much as they start off the album discussing what drugs can do positively when you engage with them in a certain process, they're also discussing and warning of the negative effects of drug abuse, I would say, or drug use. And this has a lot to do with that. I think that's as much as I can get out of it, honestly. And I don't really like listening to it. It just doesn't do a lot for me. But yeah. So Under My Skin is basically, I think, Dig 2.0. In a good way. Musically, it still gets more complicated than Dig, but it's a little more straightforward. It's more straightforward of a song, lyrically more akin to pushing people away that don't do anything positive for you, which is very much like Dig. There's a little bit of like nu metal rapping on here, which is not very long, so I don't quite cringe, but almost. It's pretty short. And again, lyrically, fuck this, I don't need your shit, all the lies, deceit, and arrogance, talk your shit, like my life is some kind of game, like you fucking know me, just go far away and be small, run far away and be small, go lie in a hole and be small. Again, lyrically kind of akin to Dig, but I enjoy this song. It's a good song. It's just a good, like I said, it's kind of like a Dig 2.0, not as short, not as in your face and aggressive all the way through, but really good. And then we have No Forever, or maybe Now or Ever. There's parentheses at key parts of the title here. Musically, it's pretty chill. There's not too many twists and turns. Some of that signature funk is still there. Again, getting into the lyrics, I feel like it's about growth and relationships, looking internally again and reflecting on what you're doing and who you are, and if that's what's best. And I don't say like we're looking at ourselves internally again, like maybe it came off that way. But I mean, this is the theme of the album, and it's not every single song that's like this, and they're done in different ways. It doesn't seem repetitive, but I'm going to give you some lyrics here. A lot. Frozen moments in time, stopped hourglass, they predicate. What you will know, dispositions lie within, and so do we. Don't want to run, don't want to hide, renounce the prayers for inspiration. If you dictate what I will be, then smash my face upon the concrete, I'm weary. Again, that juxtaposition just so perfect, and that visual, that strong visual. I feel the stairs piercing, so sorry to soil your precious eyes. Reflections spoon-feed you the bitterness and disgust that is me. And I wonder if part of this is referencing also why they chose to aesthetically look the way they did for this album. That makes a lot of sense to me. If you choose to reach out to lend me, I'll chew off your hand. I'm not begging for your fucking change. I'm not begging for your fucking change. I'm in touch with myself, all alone within myself. And this is why I think that there's a question of like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and maybe I need to reflect on that, and being like, hey, if someone tries to help me, fuck you! Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like there's a question here of whether or not this behavior and this attitude is the right thing or the positive thing. So, yeah, that's there. And I'm going to get into something about this song in a bit. Because now we're on the outro, which is just called Lethal Dosage. There's some more science talk back there, but it's pretty... There's this other digitally distorted voice as well that happens. You can hear that they're saying words, but I can tell, like, oh, I think this is English, but that's about it. So I looked up the lyrics for this, and let me go back one step. This is the outro. You think I'd be talking more about that last song? And I'm going to get back to it, just to let you know, because okay. When I look up the lyrics for the weird spoken word part, I am the sin of man, so just let me out. I'll be back again, I'll see through the cracks to pollute the soil in which you stand. I contaminate what you grow to be inside of you again, fertilizing your seed. I've got a riddle for you, if you're wise, you'll listen to me. Listen to me, listen to me again. Which, I enjoy that. I wish that it was more pronounced so I could actually hear it. Again, I wish I had the insert with me because I don't know if it's in there or not. I like when there's layered stuff that you might not pick up on, but if it's like impossible to pick up on it, I don't understand the point sometimes. And that's the end. That's the end of the album. So the thing is, I feel like it could have been stronger. One thing I already mentioned was that this is a long album. We've got, what's the runtime on this? 68 minutes. We've got five instrumental tracks, and I think we could cut it down to 3 and be good. Even if you put some of those interludes at the end in the outro and made a much longer outro, I think that would be okay. I think people would be okay with that, and just like to decompress from everything we just heard. And for a long album, it's really good. There's only 2 songs I don't really listen to that much. I already kind of told you what those were. Pharmacopia was the one, and I forget the name of the other one right now. Nothing to Gain, but that's only because of that funk bit. I still listen to it more often than I would Pharmacopia, but it just goes too far into the funky bass. But the end itself could have been much stronger. Let's say we just leave the outro the way it was. Our last song, I just didn't feel it was like super strong to end off on, and there were some better choices. Everything and Nothing or Prod, those are two things I think seem way more appropriate to end this album off really, really strongly. And this, you know, this, where No Forever or Now or Ever or whatever, I think that could have been placed anywhere in the middle of the album. There's like 5 or 6 different slots it could have fit in and just fit there perfectly. I don't think it should have been a closer. That's just me. It's a real trip, pun intended. It's definitely not a soft or easy listen, and it's not meant to be fun. It doesn't get into anthemic territory or sing-alongs. It's not meant for that. This is not what it's meant to be. It doesn't do that because it's too brutal. That's not why. It's just, you know, it does whatever it wants. Like, with these songs, some of them being 7 minutes or over, 6 minutes or over, we've got like 3 or 4 that are at least 5 minutes and over, maybe 5 songs like that. But this is a lot about introspection, and you can obviously do that in a sing-song pop way and whatever. You can talk about these things in a different instrumentation style, a different musical style that lends itself to mnemonics more, so you remember things and it's the same chorus or whatever patterns and stuff. That's just not what spoke to them. And again, we've got this element even from the album cover of science and math and structure and formula, but that's not what the music is necessarily like in a repetitive nature, in a boring way. We've got just some really strong themes here. I want to get to what Cud has to say about the album while we finish up. We saw the album as our token little drug. People can ingest it, take it in, and grow from it. We adhered ourselves to the idea that our music and the things we as individuals seek to experience, and hopefully, positively, grow from, could potentially be destructive. There are some elements in what we do which could be thought of as dangerous, but you've got to be willing to take some risks and face your fears. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful. I like just the amount of heavy concept on this album, but lyrically and instrumentally, they have accessibility there without being radio or pop friendly. To me, like I said, this is a very strong album. It's a very honest album. It definitely is uncomfortable sometimes, which challenges you as a listener. There are things that you can relate to, that you buy in. There are questions given to you. There are some of Cud's pain that is just demanding to be felt, much in the way the first Slipknot album, self-titled album, pain demands to be felt. And it's just, again, to me, this is just one of those few masterpieces. I hate that they get lumped into nu metal, even though those influences musically are really there. Not stereotypically, though. They're there strongly, but they've got other stuff going on to be really unique in their own. But I don't like it because nu metal just has a really bad rap. There's the umbrella term for some of the elements that are there. You know, comparing this album to any Limp Bizkit album is a disservice to me. You know what I mean? Like, and I listen to Limp Bizkit sometimes when I'm in the mood for something shallow that doesn't have a lot of depth. Sure, this thing is very layered in every way, has a lot of depth, great concepts that challenge you, and I'm going to start repeating myself if I keep talking about it. So LD50, which again is the lethal dosage 50, which is like the scientific whatever for when you would die from an overdose. I really like what they had to say about the concept as a whole, and them treating it as like, this is our little drug, and like, it's maybe some people say it's dangerous, but you got to take some risks, and you can find some beautiful and great experiences in here as well. And I think that's really present on Nothing to Gain, right? Like, playing with that idea of trying to empathize with a serial killer. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this album or any other one I reviewed or anything ever, I guess. So leave something in the comments. Maybe tell me what I should review another time. And that's it. We'll see you on another time for another review.